On today's show, we talk about the Packers' struggle on defense in the second half of games and some potential trade deadline deals. Join us as we check in on the Packers leading into the Cardinals game.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Ralph. As always, we want to thank any new and returning listeners. We're super excited to be talking Packers ball with you all. New episodes right now every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. For every 50 subs, for every 50 new subs, we're doing a promo on YouTube. And we are giving away some Sounds Gouda swag. So if you haven't become a public subscriber yet, go ahead and do that. When we hit number 700, we will go ahead and we will raffle away another Sounds Gouda hat. So we've also unlocked super chats, super stickers, and super thanks on our YouTube channel. And that's just another way that you can interact with us and support our channel. So we'll dive into the Packers. Obviously, as we navigate the Brewers postseason here, we've been kind of keeping tabs on that. Not good right now. As you listen to this on Wednesday morning, I'm sure that you're feeling a lot like Rob and I are, and our heads hanging pretty low. The Dodgers seem to be doing what the Dodgers do against the Brewers best. The Brewers are down 2-0 in this series and have to travel out west, which is a place that they never play well. So, Rob, on that note, how are you feeling about the Brewers, and do they still have a chance in this series?
I mean, it's not over until it's over, for sure, but just knowing the history, Blake Snell's a really, really good pitcher, man. Unbelievable. Max Muncy is a good hitter. They were both absent during our regular season sweep. But the regular season is the regular season, and Jordan makes too much sense when it goes out to California. We just have nightmares out there. So if they turn around and win this, truly, honestly, Bob Uecker is pulling some magical strings up there.
Yeah, we had to get one at home and at least give the series a chance to get back to Milwaukee. And that's going to be hard to do. Never say never. This has been a special team. I've seen this team have more comebacks and, runs scored with 2 outs and an 0-2 count and whatnot. So, as you said, not going to count this team out yet, but it's looking grim. So we'll keep checking in and hopefully have some more positive news to talk about in our Saturday episode. So just some kind of news and notes before we kind of get into some of our main topics for the day. But obviously the Packers made a few transactions. Looks like they like what they saw out of Lucas Havrisik because they released Mark McNamee, even though they didn't really have to, other than they don't really need to have an extra kicker on their roster. So I would bet that they're going to try to keep Lucas around. They did manage to get Brant Banks back. He didn't last very long out there in Tennessee, but I'm happy to see him back on the practice squad and add a little bit of depth and familiarity there. And then longtime Packers practice squad player Deslin Alexander was released as well. So good luck to wherever he goes in his NFL journey next. But one other, I guess, piece of news, obviously, we're kind of waiting around for an injury update, primarily on LVN. We know that Bullard's kind of dealing with some concussion protocol stuff. Hopefully that doesn't become an ongoing issue. But yeah, it doesn't look immediately good for LVN. I hear they're testing out and bringing in other DNs to work out. I don't know, Rob, have you heard any news on LVN at this point in time? And what do you think that means for this team over the next couple games here?
We'll get into the trade deadline stuff, but it makes Enagbare very, very important to this football team. So, I mean, they got Sorrell too, right? But, then you're just, you're playing with your depth if you end up giving away Enagbare. So I know sure a lot of teams are calling. It depends on the price that they're willing to give up for it. But depending on how bad his his injury is. I mean, if he's out, multiple weeks, you're going to need Enagbare, in my opinion. So I don't know, unless it's just a screaming good deal that you just really can't refuse. I don't know how the Packers deal away Kingsley Enagbare with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think the other kind of connecting piece is no Devontae Wyatt right now because he's out with injury, and LVN's been kind of kicking inside and playing a few of those 3-tech snaps. And now without either of them, you pretty much have Warren Brinson played pretty decent. We're going to get into that when we get into our grades from last week, but I mean, now you just have like 4 guys left that can play the interior. And Nazir Stackhouse looks like he needs a little bit of work before you can trust him more. So hopefully we get LVN and Devontae Wyatt back soon. So yeah, it's getting to be that time of year too. We're a couple weeks away from the NFL trade deadline, so I think that is coming up shortly after we play the Carolina Panthers. So in about 3 weeks here, there's been some trade rumors, one of which you've mentioned already. A couple teams have called and inquired about Kingsley Enagbare. Now, given those rumors were before the Bengals game, we didn't have an LVN injury to deal with. It seems somewhat tenable to consider it. Engabare's kind of moved down to, really like 5th edge rusher potentially. Sorrell's snaps have been increasing. So let's just say that we get LVN and Devontae Wyatt back and healthy over the next 2 or 3 weeks here. They're back and playing by the time we get to Carolina. Would you entertain a trade for Kingsley Enagbare? And what's it going to take for you to trade him, knowing that he's a free agent and you're probably not going to get anything in return for him?
It's tough. I mean, I don't think I would, just with the injuries. Again, like now, like if they're coming back sooner, um, I guess that makes a difference if they're not, or how long these are going to last. I mean, if all things considered and it's not severe and they come back sooner, I would love to get at least a 5th for a Kingsley Enagbare. I think I know, you have on here a 6th-round pick, but maybe it's probably too rich. But man, I don't know. Right now at this point, I wouldn't trade Enagbare, but I need more news and information on other injuries, in depth, because you never know. Terrell could go out there and then he could get
Yeah.
injured. You know what I mean? Like, and then what? So
I mean, I think that's the conversation we're going to battle all season, right? Like, yeah, the Packers have great depth in some of these positions, but that's a strength. So if you're going to make a Super Bowl run this year, you're going to make a Super Bowl run next year, dealing mid-season from positions of depth, isn't exactly a move that screams, we're trying to win a Super Bowl. Because, I mean, nobody ever said, oh, you didn't win the Super Bowl because you have too many pass rushers, right? Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. I put a 6th-round tag on here because if we go ahead and we finish week 8, and that leaves you with about half the season left for a team looking for a rental, he's certainly not a frontline guy, but he might be able to be a 2nd edge rusher on a team that's really, really needy, maybe a 3rd. I think probably fair trade value would be a 6th-round pick. And yeah, I'm not sure that I would do it at that point in time for a 6. Somebody's going to probably have to fish a little bit more enticing offer if they can get the 5th-rounder back that they invested in him to begin with. Yeah, I'd really have to consider it if this roster is healthier at that point in time. So moving over to the other side of the ball, keep hearing the Steelers are interested in wide receivers. I think the most of the focus has shifted towards Dontavian Wicks. Everybody's backed off of Romeo Doubs because Romeo Doubs is playing really well for this team right now. But what would be your feelings around trading Dontavian Wicks to the Steelers or anybody else at this point in time? He's essentially wide receiver 5 on this team when everybody's healthy.
I feel a lot better about this than I do about Kingsley Enagbare. And just knowing Christian Watson's going to be coming back too, the emergence of Matthew Golden, still have Romeo Doubs balling out. We'll see what happens with Jaden Reed. And you got Tucker Kraft. There's still a bevy of weapons. If you can get, a 4th-round pick, 3rd-round pick, probably that's too rich, but 4th-round pick for sure. I definitely consider this one. This one to me has a little bit more meat on the bones. get a little bit more draft capital later on day 2 next year to kind of make up for the first round pick that you won't have. So I like this one a lot better than the Kingsley Enagbare one at this moment.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting a third, but I do think that maybe a team would give up a fourth. You have a team like the Steelers who, I mean, they're really counting on Aaron Rodgers being there this season, and there's no promise of tomorrow. So that creates a little bit more sense of urgency. Maybe they'd be willing to part with their fourth. I guess I haven't even checked. I'm kind of spitballing here, right? Maybe they don't even have a fourth rounder to give, but I'd imagine that might be fair. And also, a fourth rounder, I think, is somewhat fair because Wicks is on a rookie deal that goes through next year. So that gives them a piece next to Metcalf and for who's ever the quarterback there, whether that's Aaron Rodgers or somebody else, that probably is like wide receiver 3 at a minimum on that roster. So I think the key for me would be how sure is this team about wanting to extend Romeo Doubs? Because if you let Doubs walk and you trade Dontavian Wicks, now you go into next season where you do have still a pretty solid room, right? You've got Christian Watson for one more year. You've got Matthew Golden. You've got Jaden Reed for one more year. Then you've got Savion Williams. You can bring back Malik Heath. So you still have a pretty solid room. It doesn't have the same depth that it has right now. And that may be okay as well, especially if you want to start to lean into targeting a couple guys that maybe are a little higher profile. So on the flip side of that, Rob, I think adding pieces is the way to look at it. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the Packers' issues in the second half. One of those issues for some may be that the secondary players are not good enough. I see a couple names for corners out there. So PFF just put out an article, 20 trade candidates ahead of the 25 NFL trade deadline. Tariq Woolen was a name on there from the Seattle Seahawks. He's a big name, but somebody who's highly underperformed this season. And then Alontay Taylor from the New Orleans Saints, which that one makes a lot more sense to me that they'd be willing to move on from a starting caliber player. But that would be, I believe both of these would be just end of the season rentals. So would you be interested in adding a defensive back to this room? And what would you give for those guys, Rob?
Probably a fifth or a sixth. A little bit more for Alontay Taylor. He's playing a lot better, at least his PFF grade. And from what I've seen from him, I think he's almost at a 70. Tariq Woolen last year was playing around the mid 60s, so a little bit above average. If like we've said from before, 60s about the floor for just being an average, so a little bit above that. But so far this year, he's not been. His coverage grade has been really bad. Not to say that he couldn't come in and compete and get a lot better, but that certainly could happen. But just if I'm going based on my eyeball test, without getting deep into the numbers, Alontay Taylor seems like the better, more draft capital or more premium draft capital. I say premium as in you might have to give up slightly a little bit more, I would think, for him. But I think you're getting a much better player. How old is he? Do you know, Alontay Taylor?
He's finishing his first contract. I think he's nearly 26. I think he turns 26 at some point in time this season.
And he's a free agent after the year?
He's a free agent.
Yeah.
So the Packers aren't going to want to give up much for him. I could see them offering a 6th round pick if they really felt like they were one defensive back away, especially if they feel like they have a fair chance of extending him in the offseason. But, they're not going to have a lot of money to shell out for players, external players either. So if he's a capable corner, he's probably getting at least the Nate Hobbs deal. He seems to be versatile. He plays inside, outside. He's 6 foot tall. He's actually a guy that Jeff Hafley and the Packers would probably really like, and Alontay Taylor. One thing that kind of makes sense to me is the Saints are obviously in a complete rebuild. A guy like Dontavian Wicks might be a really nice piece to have alongside of Chris Olave down there in New Orleans and their speedster Rashid.
Player for player is what you're thinking?
Player for player. Maybe we give up Wicks, which for Taylor. Wicks has got an extra year in his deal, so maybe they have to sweeten the pot with a 7th rounder, Alontay Taylor and a 7th for Dontavian Wicks.
I like that. I don't mind that.
I don't know. Well, there'll be plenty more of this to mull around over the next few weeks, but just getting the juices flowing on some ways to add to this team. So we'll skip the offensive line talk that I've got queued up here until we get to the PFF review. But let's talk about the defense. We promised people we'd talk about this. I think it's pretty heavily noted right now that the last 3 weeks the Packers they haven't made a stop in the second half. They've surrendered 52 points in the second half over the last three games. And even if they would have made one stop in the second half against the Browns or the Cowboys, the Packers would be 5-0 right now. Just one stop in either of those games. Packers are 5-0. Oh, what do you think the root of this issue is? Because obviously you had 2 great games, total games against the Lions in Washington, and then now we've had 3 outstanding first halves followed by 3 really poor or below average second half performances from this defense. Where do you pin the root of this issue, Rob?
I think it's a couple of things. I think a little bit of this is second half Joe Barry defense, a little bit. Scheme related, play a little bit more soft zone, back up. Although against the Bengals, they did send a couple of pressures, like I've alluded to from before. Some folks are getting held quite a bit. Now, I'd rather take less flags than more flags galore for any football game, please, on either side for both teams. Just makes for a really annoying game. And a lot of controversy. So I don't really want to go down that route. But and I think the other thing of this too is, and I'm not necessarily saying that the Browns did this, and the Browns is probably the most disappointing because literally everybody else has beaten the Browns besides the Packers, which makes that even more painful. But the Dallas Cowboys just Swiss cheesed us. They had like a perfect game plan, just quick passes, get the ball out of Dak Prescott's hand. I thought that Joe Flacco and the Bengals, and maybe it was more of a just like him in his first game getting to know Zach Taylor's system, what he wants, the cadences. He had the wristband on his arm how he was playing doing his play calls. So I'm sure there was some of that mixed into that. And the second half kind of eased in a little bit more, and boom, got on script, got to the quick passes, got the ball to Jamar Chase a lot more, identified when they were in man, specifically on Nixon for Jamar Chase, and was able to throw some darts to him, and they made some really good catches. So, but the other part of that too is the pass rush does feel like it's a little bit gassed as well, coming out of the gates here in the second half. So, if that's conditioning, I don't know. I'm not sure how I would even begin to know that, but it just feels like they're standing back there and they're not getting much pressure, not getting much sack. So obviously something's happening.
Yeah. Matt LaFleur brought up conditioning, and if this was week 2, week 1, I would buy that. But you're really trying to tell me that after this game has played, 4 full games and just came off a bye week that conditioning is a problem in the second half? I don't know. If that's the case, then that's another coaching thing that I've got a big issue with.
100%.
Right? So I don't know. We'll see. I think a lot of it can be adjusted in the scheme. I think Jeff Hafley will get it figured out. Kind of reminds me a lot of last year, where the first half of the season, some of our complaints were, well, we're not getting enough pressure and we're allowing teams to push the ball down the field because we're not getting pressure. But we kind of just all blame personnel. We don't have the personnel group to generate the pressure. And then really, second half of the season, Jeff Hafley made some adjustments. We obviously had some guys like Edrin Cooper kind of come onto the scene and everything started to click. I expect them to make some adjustments and get this figured out. But man, if they need to do some man makers or something, we get going. So
yeah, absolutely. Look at the first 2 games. Look how much energy and passion and just out of the freaking gates. Did they leave it all in those first 2 games? Because a lot of that too was rushing with 4, remind you too as well. And they were getting home and they were getting pressures and they were getting sacks. And then they were able to play a little bit of the zone and then read the ball on the quarterback and be able to come up, boom, and they weren't getting anything.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, they clearly were conditioned enough to play well through the entirety of both of those games. But I don't know. Maybe the Packers coaches have just eased off and they haven't been doing any in-season conditioning, and their opponents are out hustling them right now. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I know that this trend has to stop, and I think it will soon. So let's check in on our PFF grades from the Bengals game. Overall, I think when Rob pulls this up here, you're going to see, I mean, a lot of players performed and graded out really well overall. And Rob, if you can give us a couple, clicks in the Zoom, that was perfect. So you can see top 5 on offense: Matthew Golden, Josh Jacobs, Zach Tom, Jordan Love, and Romeo Dobbs. None of that really surprises me. Bottom 5, starting from worst: Bo Melton with a 47.8, John Fitzpatrick 51.7, Stephen Williams 53.6, Malik Heath 55.4, and Aaron Banks 55.6. Especially when you talk about Malik Heath and Aaron Brooks, those are really kind of just sub average, because 60s PFF's average. So, really overall in offense, that's not too bad. But what are your observations from what you can make of these grades, Rob? And what do you think?
Well, I was really happy if I switch it back. Sean Ryan, Jordan Morgan, Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins. So they're all, kind of in that top hemisphere, which is good. But then our prize possession, one of our prize free agent possessions, Aaron Banks, although, a 70.4 and pass block on 35 pass blocking snaps. So that's nothing to write home about. That's not too bad. But then what he came in for and what we thought was going to be his strength over here, the run blocking, that has been below average, as you can see. Who was the other one? Luke Musgrave just continues. The one that Jordan Love sailed over his head. Do you think that was a wrong route that Luke Musgrave ran again? Because I was wondering that same thing, or if Jordan Love just got a little bit too much more ball ahead of that, because they continue to have those miscues, and Luke Musgrave is just not putting together anything competent on this team.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of tried to read between the lines on Jordan Love's answer about that during the presser. I mean, he kind of just said he missed it, right? Not that I would expect him to be, like kind of.
Throwing anybody under the bus.
Well, that and, maybe if he was supposed to run a different route, he might have been playing a little bit coy because they might try to unleash that in a week or two here and maybe try to get that right, since they have that on tape now. But I don't know. I'll take it for face value and say maybe the ball slipped. Maybe Jordan made a bad throw. But it is kind of circumstantial that it happens to be a pretty bad miss when targeting Luke Musgrave. So,
It happens more
overall,
often than that it doesn't happen.
one observation in general is like really all of our starters, and they technically have Luke Musgrave listed as a starter. He must have been out there. The first play of the game must have been a play in 12 personnel. So if you kind of take that out of it, really all of our go back to just the regular offensive ratings, Rob. Yeah, I mean, if you really look at our starters outside of Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft scored a 59.0, which again, average game, average season performance is 60. Really, everybody on the offense for starters is in the plus or well in the plus. I think that's a really positive sign. I know that we thought that they sputtered a little bit through the first half. A little bit of that was play calling again on Matt LaFleur, kind of going east and west instead of getting vertical. But I think a really, really solid day for the offense. So we're going to hit you with the defense here. So why don't you give us our top 5 and bottom 5, Rob?
Yeah, Warren Brinson over here rounding out number 1. Look at that. I'm brand new into seeing this, so that's a little surprising to me. I got to admit that I wasn't quite as glued on to Warren Brinson during this game as I was some other players and different things going on. But Micah
Yeah, and
Parsons, go
just
ahead.
to interrupt really quick, that's on 21 snaps too. So I mean, that's
Oh,
not like the 5 snaps that Nazir Stackhouse got. I mean, it's not a full load by any means, but like that's a decent amount of snaps for Brinson in this game.
yeah, and 19 of those as a pass rush.
Hmm.
So Wow, that's definitely surprising. Overtaking Micah Parsons here, but Micah Parsons 58 snaps over double, so a little bit more data on that one. Evan Williams continues to do Evan Williams types of things. Edrin Cooper, of course, up here. Colby Woolen, man, coming in here, round out the top five. Bottom five, only on 16 snaps, but Kingsley Enagbare tackling was absolutely atrocious. Deer Stackhouse just still can't put it together. He's got a long way to go for sure. Carl Brooks on 53 snaps just hasn't had a last year and some change. Just has not played too well. Keyshawn Nixon had a really difficult task. I thought, like you made a really good point. A little bit of Jekyll, a little bit of Hyde, some good, some bad. He was going up against some really good competition there too. So got to give him a little bit of grain of salt. Quay Walker didn't have his best game either to round out the top five. But Jordan, is there anything here either on the good or the bad or anywhere else that stands out to you?
I mean, Keyshawn, man. Kind of. I mean, he definitely had a couple plays, but probably gets dinged a little bit for like a couple miraculous plays. Highlight reel plays that are gonna that Jamar Chase. He had him handcuffed, and he still comes down with a touchdown. So he's not getting a positive grade on that play, but really his coverage was really pretty good there, right? So I thought he should have been credited for at least one more pass breakup in this game than I think PFF gave him credit for as well. So I don't think that helped, but couple players, good to see a little bit more in the positive. Javon Bullard had one of his better games of the season.
Yep.
Go ahead and click on Javon Bullard's name. So that
Definitely is.
because I think right now in terms of our starters, I think he's the lowest overall graded player if you count him as a nickel starter, which that's pretty much our base. So we'll see where he's at with this concussion, but nice to see him have a positive game. Do that. Good game for Bullard. Xavier McKinney though, he's been, according to PFF, he's been kind of having a middling season. He's one of our other lower rated players on this defense. I know they're not really challenging him and throwing at him, but PFF necessarily isn't giving him super high praise for people throwing the other direction. But good to see him have a little bit more positive game. If you click on pressures, I think the Packers sort out those pressures. 16 total pressures in this game. Go over a couple more to the right. Total under pressures there. TOT. You can see Micah Parsons was credited for 4 pressures, Gary for 4, Van Ness for 3, Brinson for 2, Carl Brooks for 2, Baron Sorrell for 1. And that one that Baron Sorrell had, man, he looked like he was shot out of a cannon. I don't know how that ball got into T. Higgins' hands.
Go Magic.
They're going to start to connect on some of these, especially if the NFL decides that they're going to make a few more holding calls, because it's going to free a couple of these guys up. But despite the lack of sacks, they still are generating some pressure on opposing offenses. So I don't know. We could sit here and analyze a bunch of this, but I don't have anything else of note to go over here. We mentioned Stackhouse still has some work to do. So standings check though. We're getting to that point in time too, as we get to the trade deadline, where we can start to talk about how things are shaking out here in the NFC. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 5-1. They're the only team that has a better record in the NFC than the Packers at 3-1-1, followed by the 49ers, Eagles, Seahawks, and Lions and Rams that are all 4-2. And then the Bears and the Vikings are at 3-2. So all of the NFC North teams have winning records right now. But any early season surprises for you, Rob, in terms of the standings and how close to the way things are shaking out right now do you expect things to be at the end of the season?
A lot of season left. 49ers definitely have an easy schedule. They're getting berated now by injuries. Didn't Fred Warner? I think he's gone. He broke his leg or something.
Dislocated his kneecap or something like that. I think he's out for the season.
Yeah. So that's really going to hurt. He's probably the best linebacker in the game. But yeah, they're being berated by injuries. They have a really, really easy schedule. The Eagles all of a sudden are spiraling downward. Reminds me of their season a couple years ago where they started off very, very hot, and then I mean they just got Billy Whomped by the New York Giants, Jackson Dart and Cam. I want to run everybody over Scattaboo. Chicago Bears are putting together after 0-2. You know, they've strung together 3 wins, so they're not looking too bad. Detroit finally loses one. I thought that to the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought that they had looked like the best, one of the better teams, them and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think really right now there is too much season left to go for me to predict it. It could really be flip-flopped. This could be all backwards by the time we get to the end of the season, and some teams are going to come out ahead of this. But I do like the Packers' chances for sure. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing really good. Seahawks with Sam Darnold are playing some excellent football, playing really good defense under Mike McDonald. So I don't know, pretty competitive NFC.
Yeah, big game coming up this week for the Buccaneers and the Lions. They play each other. You know, Lions could win that game, and the Buccaneers could be 5-2. The Lions could be 5-2, and the Packers could be sitting at the top of the NFC North or the NFC with a 4-1-1 record. So that'll be a big game. You know, just talking to my coworker Bird, shout out Bird. You know, the Bears have 2 extremely easy games the next 2 weeks. They've got the Saints this week, and then who do the Bears have after that? I forget. They've got the Saints, then they've got the Ravens and the Bengals.
Ravens.
You know, yeah. But I mean, like you could all of a sudden be looking at like a 6-2 or a 5-3 Bears team, midway through the season. So not saying that that's how the end of the season is going to go for them, but I mean, the Bears could continue to rise in these NFC standings for a couple weeks here. A little bit of favorable schedule, a little bit of taking care of business that they probably should take care of. So
I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs at all as a wild card. Would not be surprised.
But yeah, we'll continue to keep an eye on it. And I just thought it was worth mentioning, just a little fantasy football check-in. Most of the time we keep our Sounds Gouda League out of it. But my team, Jay Breezy's Bombers, got the first win of the season. I'm having a terrible year. Me and Kalani Jones down there at 1-5. But shout out to Austin Nord right now, Pins and Aces, John Revis, Finding Nico, so Anna,
Yep.
Rob, those kind of Austin Pins and Aces, John Revis, Anna Gray, and Rob, top 5 in the league right now. So
I started off 4-0, and I am 4-2. I lost this last week by a point, I believe it was. Just how it goes. I shouldn't have won week 1 against Anna, so shout out Anna Gray. I came back from like 50 points down, and I beat you by like half a point. So this has to be the karma for me getting away with that week 1 win.
yeah, so fantasy football. I'm 3-3 in my other league that matters, though. I went 0-3, and I've won 3 in a row. I'm a heavy favorite this week, so maybe there's still hope for me in my other league.
Come back, Bombers. That is all that we have for you tonight, though, Packers fans. So thank you for coming in and taking a listen to us. Like we alluded to at the top, we do have new content every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So please make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. If you know somebody that would like to nerd out just as much as we do with the Packer, please make sure to share our podcast. We would generally love to interact and engage with new fans. With that being said, though, that's all that we have for you tonight. Packers fans, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.